COVID-19 is causing a spike in relationship breakdowns. Divorce rates are soaring. They were double the normal rate in Wuhan during the first lockdown. In the US, they've surged by a third. The pandemic has shrunk our world into our homes. Juggling childcare alongside work, being on top of each other 24/7, it's all proven too much for many couples. But some say it's actually made their bonds stronger. How can we make pressure cooker relationships work in these tough times?
I'll be talking to a psychology researcher about that in a few minutes. First, crisis aside, every third married couple in Germany gets divorced. Separation can be prevented by asking professionals for advice, but you've got to be open to it.
Hi, ich bin Jamila Mewis.
Und ich bin Tino Mewis.
Und das ist unser Podcast.
Intensiv gewollt.
Podcast hosts with a difference. They've been married for 10 years and have 3 children together. Jamila and Tino's show is all about their relationship during the pandemic, the highs and the lows. It's really tight for everyone right now, for the couples and the home life. Now more than ever, we're dependent on good communication as a couple and especially as parents to organize everything, so we can work and get through this in good shape. Coronavirus lockdowns have put pressure on couples. Working from home and homeschooling have left partners with very little free time. Constantly living on top of each other can create conflict and even worsen existing relationship problems. When couples are at their wits' end, professionals can help. Strangely, we tend to assume relationships are something we're simply able to do. And if we can't, then we say the other person is to blame and we separate, or we're not a good fit. I don't believe that relationships always have to be easy. I believe that it's possible to get to the stage where you can have a clear relationship with each other, and it's no longer difficult to talk about problematic topics. For some couples, going to a therapist is a big step. A first aid kit for home life. This box contains cards of questions for couples to ask each other, developed by a professional therapist. Many relationships suffer from a breakdown in communication. This method offers a playful way for partners to get back into conversation with each other. Couples come to therapy feeling underappreciated or a lack of recognition. Often they're fighting more and more, getting stuck in repeating thought patterns. So they come to discuss their everyday lives, how they're bearing the burdens of life unequally. And now during the coronavirus, you also get boredom, a lack of sexuality, or simply that they are just getting on each other's nerves. Demand for therapy has grown, but it's not exactly cheap. A session can cost between 80 and 150 euros. There's no guarantee of success. I think we choose our partners ourselves, and this offers great growth potential with each other. We grow when we overcome conflicts, not when everything is easy. But couples therapy can give both partners the support they need to get through the pandemic.
Psychology researcher Raquel Peel joins us from Australia now. The report, Raquel, said that we grow when we overcome conflicts, not when everything's easy. But for a lot of us, the question is what to do in the first place when the challenge facing us is just too overwhelming.
Yeah, that's right, Ben. For couples, it can be a really difficult time spending a lot more time together and having to face issues that you have already in your relationship. And now they are at your face. They are something that you have to confront.
What happens, though, when those issues have become too big, when there's been a communication breakdown, obviously, or the relationship's gone toxic? How can couples normalize the situation or re-establish some sort of link?
Absolutely. They have to go back to the basics. We have to remember why we are together in the first place. So it could be little things like learning how to communicate, learning that at times when there is conflict, you need to be able to express yourself It's about how you are feeling as opposed to using your language, which can put the other person at a defensive mode.
What about something like sex? How do you re-establish something as intimate as that when you're both fighting and basically hate each other at the end of the day?
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. Sex is really important, and we are intrinsically motivated to seek intimacy. And sex is how we are intimate. But what I would say is, if you are at conflict with your partner, you're not going to be able to go straight to sex, especially if that is, it might be the reason why you are in conflict in the first place. So you might have to start with small gestures, such as sitting together on the couch, holding hands, sitting closer, touching each other. So you might have to, again, go back to basics and start with gentle touches to then be able to go all the way to sex again.
So it's the little things that counts, and I guess a lot of patience.
Absolutely. A lot of patience and learning to walk again in your relationship.
I'd also just like to add, sexual health has a direct impact on our general health, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Again, because we are seeking to be intimate, sex is how we do it. So it does have a huge impact in how we understand ourselves and how we rate ourselves worthy of our partners. So feeling sexy or feeling wanted is a huge part of our relationships. And it is something that we actually have to talk to our partners about. So if for some reason you're not having sex in your relationship and it's making you feel down about yourself, it is something that you have to bring up because it is part of who we are. It is part of our self-esteem.
Well, why is sex and private time with a partner or loved one so important in a pandemic?
Well, again, in a pandemic, it becomes more obvious because we are spending a lot more time together. So all these conflicts, all these little kinks in our relationships become quite obvious and we have to address it. So if there is conflict and you're not able to have sex, then it becomes obvious that you have to talk about it. And a lot of us actually find it difficult to address the issue.
It's a hard one to talk about. Raquel, tell me though, how can we avoid getting into this situation in the first place within a relationship?
Look, it just goes back to communication and thinking that even though we think we know our partner, we think we know how it is to be in a relationship, it doesn't hurt to stop and analyze how we could do it better, to communicate and take it step by step, sometimes going back to the drawing board and saying, how can I do things differently? And listen, if you are going to your partner with a question, how can I be better? How can I do things differently? What are you expecting to change? It's actually being able to listen as well.
Very interesting stuff, Raquel, and a lot for me to definitely listen to and take on board. Thank you very much for joining us, Raquel Peel there from Ipswich in Australia.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
Some great solutions there from Raquel. But now it's your chance to ask the questions. Keep sending them into our YouTube channel, and our science correspondent Derek Williams will do his best to answer them.
How likely are you to catch COVID-19 outside, for example, from someone running by?
For me, one of the most striking aspects of this pandemic is the amount of research that's gone into trying to answer seemingly simple questions like this, which turn out to actually be pretty incredibly complex. I mean, who would have guessed even a year ago that we'd have gotten so obsessed with the highly abstract world of aerosol distribution physics, both in enclosed rooms and outside? Back to the question though, we now know that while it certainly might be possible to catch COVID-19 outdoors, it's much, much less likely than it is indoors in poorly ventilated spaces where people spend extended periods of time. That's because, unlike outdoors, aerosols accumulate in enclosed spaces and increase the chance that you might inhale enough of what an infected person has exhaled to catch the disease. Though that's an amount, I'd like to note, by the way, that we still don't know with any certainty. In general, the consensus seems to be that in addition to the indoors-outdoors aspect of the equation, the other factors that play major roles in infection are how long exposure lasts, how close an infected person comes to you, and the amount of time that you're around them. The WHO only recommends masks in outdoor settings where physical distancing can't be maintained, like crowds, and not for people doing intense physical activity. That's because pretty much all the indicators point to the conclusion that the jogger panting by you in the park just doesn't really present that big of a risk.
Derek Williams there. Good advice as well. I wouldn't mind going for a jog after work. Briefly, in other corona-related news, though, more countries are suspending their rollout of the AstraZeneca vaccine, following the example of Norway and Denmark on Thursday. Denmark made the call after reports of severe blood clots after patients received the shot. No definitive link between the jab and the clots have yet been proven. The Danish Health and Medicines Authority says it's issuing a 2-week halt out of precaution as it investigates further. The European Medicines Agency has approved Johnson & Johnson's vaccine for use in the European Union. The single-dose shot is the 4th to be licensed across the 27 EU nations. Authorities hope that a one-dose vaccine will help speed up the stalled rollout of COVID jabs here in Europe. And fancy a Texas tea? After knocking off work, that is, unmasked. Texas has lifted its mask mandate and capacity restrictions on restaurants and other businesses. That's despite experts warning the 100% relaxation of curbs will exacerbate the spread of worrying variants. The pandemic has hit the United States the hardest. The infection rate has fallen dramatically since January, but remains high in absolute terms. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and see you again soon.